I'm Bambi Francisco, and I'm speaking with Aydin Senkut. He is a very active angel investor here in Silicon Valley. He's invested in about 40 companies since 2006. Prior to being an angel investor, Aydin was one of the early employees over at Google. Aydin, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Bambi.
You've had
for having me here.
A lot of success from Mint, just bought by Intuit, Aardvark getting a lot of buzz, PowerSet sold to Microsoft, Discuss. Wow, you're really kind of building up a huge portfolio. Are you done investing this year? How many investments do you think you'll be doing this year?
No, actually, I've taken a little break. I became a new father, first-time father in May, but have been kind of picking the speed back up. And I would say it's probably going to be around 10, 12 investments this year in total. 10,
12 investments,
yes.
And it's only 3 more months.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. What interests you? Tell us the areas that you're interested in.
So I think it's a combination of 2 things. So one is, again, interesting companies that are being created, right? There's a huge amount of interesting companies with very small, scrappy, cash-efficient teams with great technology, great IP that are already getting traction, that there is definitely something there. So that's kind of one. And then the second area is basically being proactive and saying, here are 4 or 5 white space areas where I'm not seeing a lot of competition or I'm not seeing a lot of deal flow, but I would love to invest. And in combination of 2, been an incredible year so far in terms of the companies I've been able to get involved. And I would add maybe one small third group there, which is companies that I really believe in, and I'm an early stage investor, but every now and then I do make an exception for an incredible company just to kind of get involved in any way I can, because I feel there is still so much more room for the company to grow.
And you're making $50,000, $25,000 investments, I'm sure, something like that.
It's in the range. I would say 25 to 100K per round, and then on aggregate, there has been numbers that are larger than that over multiple rounds.
What do you think the valuation for companies? There's thousands of entrepreneurs on the site and thousands of companies on Vader, and many of the entrepreneurs probably wonder what kind of valuation should they be thinking about if they're raising $200,000 or $500,000?
Well, I think it's just one of those tough questions to answer because it depends on so many other variables. But I think the valuation of the company, 2 important factors. One is supply and demand. So how much inbound investor interest is there? And to the extent they can leverage that and get a high valuation for their company is great. But in my opinion, it should also fundamentally reflect the reality of the company. I mean, early stage, there aren't a lot of data points to go by, so there isn't as much fundamental. But whatever valuation they end up getting, they're going to have to build the company to that level. So if the valuation gets way ahead of where the fundamentals of the company is, that can kind of play a double-edged role. That can be a double-edged sword in the sense that it can affect later on their success in raising new rounds or being able to exit the company or being able to have enough alternatives what they can do.
Well, several years ago when you start a company, or sort of it's sort of $3 million is kind of your kind of the base valuation for a startup in Silicon Valley. Where is that today?
I mean, the range is still, I would say, $2 to $6 million. Okay. I mean, somewhere in between, lower end, depending on where the company is, where the team is, higher end, if it's a more, if it's kind of a more complete team and really exciting idea, there's a lot of competition for the deal.
Yep.
And, sometimes even a little bit more than that, depending on if the team is coming with sterling backgrounds and everybody wants to be in the deal. So
I've heard somebody say that in the private markets, it's still overpriced as opposed to the public markets, sort of gotten back to kind of being not as hyped or not as overpriced. So where are we in terms of valuations? Do you think that where are they trending?
I think the issue there is there's still a lot of cash in the industry, and valuations. I'm seeing 2 decoupled trends. So one is, I think for the startups where there isn't a lot of inbound interest and it's not a hot area, the founders are having a really hard time because I think there's still kind of transition in the industry and people only want to make investments in companies that are perceived as great potentials and low risk. So on the one hand, I feel some of the entrepreneurs are hitting this wall where if they're not in this hot areas and if they don't have great contacts to investors, they're kind of having difficulty getting the valuation or the funds they want. Whereas some other teams, if the team has an incredible background and they're in this hot area that is popular with everyone and they have great connections and they already have multiple offers, those tend to get a huge valuation despite the environment and despite the economy.
What was the valuation for Thread?
The valuation for Thread, I'm not exactly sure what the final number ended up being. I was talking to Brian Phillips about it, but I think it was a good number for him. I think he ended up getting a lot of inbound interest, so he was able to raise great funds and at a good valuation.
Was it at the high level, so $6 million?
I would say, again, it was in the $2 to $6 million range. I don't know what the final number ended up being, since I'm not in the syndicate.
How does someone get investment from you?
The best way is basically to find some kind of connection to me, either via LinkedIn or one of the people that I know. Referrals are really important, and it's just one way of qualifying. Obviously, if somebody I already know, it's easier. And again, one of the ways is, again, have a very clear, concise idea of why it's a good investment, why it's worthy of this early stage investment. And then the second thing is, again, I'm pretty public about the spaces that I'm interested in and the trends that I try to be ahead of. So if it's in one of those spaces, obviously it's going to be very interesting as well.
Okay, and people can also reach you on Vader too if they want to get in touch with you. So we're gonna keep you around because we're gonna talk about some of the trends that you mentioned.
That sounds great.
Great. So I've been speaking with Aydin Senkut. I'm Bambi Francisco.